10,000 years ago, when the last great ice age was finally releasing its frozen grip on the northern hemisphere, and the Sahara was still a vast green savanna threaded with rivers, lakes, and roaming wildlife, something was unfolding across the ancient world that no civilization we recognize had yet been born to record. Humanity stood at a crossroads. According to the traditional story, people were only beginning to abandon a nomadic existence, taking their first uncertain steps toward farming and permanent settlement. They were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers, living in small bands with limited technology and only the most basic forms of social organization. Yet, scattered across the archaeological record are discoveries that refuse to fit comfortably into that narrative, discoveries so sophisticated that they continue to challenge long-held assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric societies. In southeastern Turkey, on a limestone ridge known today as Göbekli Tepe, human beings were quarrying enormous stone pillars weighing as much as 20 tons directly from the bedrock. Without metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or domesticated draft animals, they carved these towering monoliths with astonishing precision, decorating them with detailed reliefs of foxes, lions, snakes, vultures, wild boars, insects, and abstract symbols whose meanings remained fiercely debated. They then arranged these pillars into massive circular enclosures, following carefully planned geometric layouts. Some researchers have explored possible astronomical alignments involving bright stars and constellations, while others argue the primary significance was symbolic or ceremonial rather than celestial. Whatever their ultimate purpose, the scale of planning, engineering, and cooperation required to construct the site has fundamentally changed archaeology's understanding of the prehistoric world. Even in 2024 and 2025, new excavations, advanced ground-penetrating surveys, and fresh academic studies continue revealing previously unknown structures hidden beneath the surrounding hills, suggesting that only a small fraction of the ancient complex has been uncovered. At nearly the same time, in the fertile river valleys of Mesopotamia, communities were growing larger and more organized than earlier models of human development had predicted for that era. Permanent settlements appeared centuries before many scholars once believed possible. Trade networks expanded over remarkable distances. Specialized craftsmanship emerged alongside increasingly complex religious practices. Instead of civilization appearing suddenly in one place, evidence now points toward multiple regions experimenting with sophisticated social organization far earlier than traditional timelines once suggested. Then there is the evidence hidden inside humanity itself. Within the human genome, preserved silently for thousands of generations, scientists discovered fragments of DNA inherited from ancient human populations that had never been identified through written history. During the 21st century, advances in ancient DNA sequencing revealed that modern humans interbred with groups such as the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, populations that diverged from our own evolutionary branch hundreds of thousands of years earlier. These inherited genetic sequences are not merely historical curiosities. Research published in leading scientific journals has shown that some influence immune function, adaptation to extreme environments, metabolism, and even responses to certain diseases. Every new genome recovered from ancient remains continues refining this picture, revealing that human evolution was far more interconnected than earlier generations of scientists imagined. When Grok AI was asked whether aliens could have lived among human beings during the last 10,000 years, the question itself was designed to provoke a dramatic answer. Instead, the system produced something far more nuanced. Rather than declaring the idea true or false, it synthesized evidence from archaeology, genetics, anthropology, astronomy, and ancient literature, separating established scientific findings from speculation. Instead of treating every mystery as proof of extraterrestrial involvement or dismissing unusual discoveries outright, it compared published research, archaeological reports, genetic studies, and historical records to determine where the evidence was strong. Where it remained uncertain, and where popular claims had gone beyond the available facts, the result was not confirmation of extraterrestrial visitors, nor was it a complete rejection of every mystery. Instead, it highlighted a simple but profound reality. There are genuine unanswered questions about humanity's distant past that continue to fuel scientific investigation. Sites like Göbekli Tepe, unexpected discoveries in ancient DNA, and complex symbolic traditions preserved in early cultures demonstrate that prehistoric humans were capable of achievements far beyond what older textbooks once allowed. And they remind us that history is not a finished story, but an evolving investigation, one that changes every time a new excavation, laboratory analysis, or technological breakthrough reveals evidence that previous generations never had the ability to examine. By the time you reach the end of that evidence, you may find that the real mystery is not whether extraterrestrials shaped human history, but how much of humanity's own forgotten past still remains buried beneath layers of time. The greatest surprise may not be the possibility of visitors from elsewhere, but the realization that ancient human civilizations themselves were likely far more sophisticated, organized, and intellectually capable than we once believed. Every decade brings discoveries that force archaeologists to rewrite long-accepted timelines, pushing the origins of complex societies, monumental architecture, and symbolic thought farther back into prehistory. Questions that once belonged only to speculative books are increasingly being examined through rigorous scientific methods, with careful distinction between evidence, interpretation, and imagination. Begin with the ground, because the most powerful physical evidence for something extraordinary happening 10,000 years ago is not found in a UFO report, an ancient legend, or a sensational internet video. It is buried beneath the soil of southeastern Turkey, at a site excavated by internationally recognized archaeologists, documented in peer-reviewed journals, analyzed using modern dating techniques, and debated by experts across the world. Despite decades of research, the site continues to challenge many traditional assumptions about the development of civilization. It suggests that organized religion, monumental architecture, and large-scale cooperation may have emerged before agriculture became fully established, reversing a sequence that historians once considered almost unquestionable. More than 11,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers built a monumental stone complex that is widely regarded as one of the earliest known ceremonial centers ever discovered. Known today as Göbekli Tepe, the megalithic site sits atop a limestone ridge in Upper Mesopotamia, in what is now southeastern Turkey. It is approximately twice as old as Stonehenge, and thousands of years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The complex contains multiple circular and oval enclosures, constructed from enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing more than 20 tons. Many of these pillars are decorated with remarkably detailed carvings of foxes, snakes, vultures, wild boars, cranes, scorpions, and mysterious abstract symbols whose meanings remain unknown. The precision of the stonework, the scale of the construction, and the level of planning required have astonished archaeologists since the site's discovery. Even more remarkable, geophysical surveys indicate that many additional buried structures remain hidden beneath the surrounding hillside, meaning that the portion excavated so far may represent only a small fraction of the entire ancient complex. Every new season of excavation raises as many questions as it answers, making Göbekli Tepe one of the most fascinating archaeological mysteries of the modern era. 11,000 years old, 2 times older than Stonehenge. These numbers are not in dispute. The radiocarbon dating has been confirmed repeatedly by multiple independent laboratories using multiple independent samples. What is in dispute? What has been in dispute since the moment German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first understood what he was looking at in 1994 is how. How did a population that the standard archaeological model describes as nomadic hunter-gatherers, people with no cities, no agriculture, no writing, no metallurgy, no wheel, organize themselves well enough to quarry 20-ton limestone pillars, transport them across significant distances, raise them into vertical position, and arrange them in geometric configurations aligned to astronomical bodies with a precision that required systematic long-term observation of stellar movements. The construction of this monumental site would have required advanced planning, a labor force, and technical skills. The site's stone circles are supported by massive pillars, weighing up to 20 tons, featuring carvings of animals and abstract symbols. Its builders arranged these structures with architectural sophistication that predates the invention of agriculture by thousands of years. And here is what makes Göbekli Tepe genuinely different from every other anomalous ancient site that gets pressed into service by alternative history. It was not built after civilization developed. It was built before. The sequence that every textbook described hunter-gatherers transition to farming. Farming creates surplus. Surplus enables specialization. Specialization produces organized labor. Organized labor eventually produces monumental construction. That sequence is exactly backwards at Göbekli Tepe. The monument came first. Farming appears to have developed later, possibly in response to the organizational demands of maintaining the monument itself. Göbekli Tepe probably played an important role in the origin of civilization. New work from 2024 shows how the discovery of a solar calendar on Pillar 43 substantially supports an astronomical interpretation. The calendar is written using geometric symbols and corresponds to 12 lunar cycles plus 10 additional days, with the missing day completing the solar year interpreted as the date written on the pillar. This suggests the builders possessed astronomical knowledge not thought to be available for another 10,000 years, along with the earliest evidence yet of arithmetic. Astronomical knowledge not thought to be available for another 10,000 years. This is not a fringe website making this claim. This is a published paper from the University of Edinburgh, whose author holds a position at the Institute for Materials and Processes in the School of Engineering. His methodology involves statistical analysis, pattern matching, and probability calculations cross-referenced with archaeoastronomical software. The finding that Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe encodes a solar calendar using arithmetic and astronomical constants is peer-reviewed, published, and contested precisely because it is significant enough to be worth contesting. If it is correct, the people who built Göbekli Tepe possessed a systematic understanding of celestial mechanics that the standard history of human intellectual development places thousands of years later. They were doing astronomy and arithmetic, while supposedly still figuring out how to plant wheat. And then, around 8000 BCE, they deliberately buried the entire site. They filled the enclosures with soil. They covered their own work. They preserved it in the most effective way available to a pre-literate culture by burying it so completely that it was invisible to every subsequent civilization that rose and fell in the region for the next 10,000 years, until a farmer's plow broke through the surface in the 1960s and Klaus Schmidt's excavations finally uncovered what was underneath. Why would you bury something you built? The standard archaeological answer is that it may have been a form of ritual decommissioning, a ceremonial end to the site's active use. That answer is not wrong, but it sits alongside another possibility that the evidence does not rule out, that burying it was deliberate preservation, that the people who built it understood their civilization would not survive, that what they had encoded in those pillars needed to outlast whatever was coming, and that stone covered in earth would outlast stone left exposed. If they were preserving a message, they succeeded, beyond any reasonable expectation. It lasted 11,000 years and is now being read for the first time. Now moved from the ground to the genome, because the DNA evidence for something extraordinary embedded in human prehistory is not confined to the fringe. It is published in Science and Nature and the Proceedings of the Royal Society by geneticists at Harvard and the Max Planck Institute in UCLA, and what it shows is that the human genome contains sequences from populations that have no confirmed fossil record, no known archaeological presence, and whose contribution to living human beings is functionally significant rather than merely passive. A new analysis of ancient genomes suggests that different branches of the human family tree interbred multiple times, and that some humans carry DNA from an archaic, unknown ancestor. Population geneticists have developed statistical tools to find unusually ancient DNA in genomes of living people. After almost a decade of tantalizing but unproven sightings, several teams are now converging on at least 2 distinct episodes of very ancient interbreeding, involving populations with no physical fossil evidence, ghost populations. This is the technical term in population genetics for a population that exists only as a signal in the DNA of other groups, detectable by its statistical fingerprint, but not yet matched to any known fossil or archaeological site. The Denisovans were a ghost population until a finger bone in a Siberian cave gave them physical form. The archaic West African hominin detected by the UCLA team of Durvasula and Sankararaman, which contributed 2 to 19% of the genome of certain West African populations, and which diverged from the rest of the human family tree approximately 625,000 years ago, remains a ghost. No fossil has been identified. No dig site has been confirmed. A population that interbred with the ancestors of millions of living people left no bones that anyone has found. 2025 genetic study revealed a hidden chapter in human evolution using a computational algorithm called COBRA that models how ancient human populations split apart and later merged back together. The researchers found that our history is far richer and more complex than previously imagined, with deep ancestral structure, shared by all modern humans, pointing to episodes of interbreeding and population merging that the fossil record has not yet fully documented. The fossil record has not yet fully documented it. That phrase carries enormous weight. It means that human beings today carry the biological inheritance of populations whose physical existence we cannot yet confirm through any evidence other than the genetic signal itself. And the functional contribution of those ghost lineages is not trivial. The EPAS1 gene variant that allows Tibetans to live at altitude without suffering cardiovascular damage is Denisovan. In origin, the immune system variants carried by Melanesian and Papuan populations that improve resistance to specific pathogens are Denisovan in origin. The MUC19 gene haplotype, found at high frequency in admixed American populations, was reported in August 2025 to be Denisovan in origin. These are not random genetic souvenirs. They are biological adaptations, inherited from populations that had apparently been evolving in their specific environments for long enough to develop them, and passed to Homo sapiens through interbreeding events that the DNA confirms happened and that the fossil record has not yet explained. Now take the ancient texts, because the textual Evidence for non-human intelligence in the human story 10,000 years ago is not limited to vague religious symbolism that could be interpreted in any direction. Some of it is specific enough to be disturbing. The Sumerian king lists, among the oldest written documents in existence, describe a period before the flood, during which beings called the Anunnaki ruled the earth, followed by human kings with reigns measured in thousands of years. The Vedic texts of India describe flying craft called vimanas, with technical specifications detailed enough that engineers have published serious analyses of them. The Book of Enoch, which predates the biblical canon and was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, describes beings called the Watchers who descended to earth, interbred with human women, and transmitted knowledge of metallurgy, astronomy, cosmetics, and weapon making to a human population that had not developed those skills. The Egyptian pyramid texts, among the oldest religious literature known, describe the pharaoh journeying among the stars and interacting with beings whose home is not on earth in language whose astronomical precision has been confirmed by modern celestial mapping. Every one of these traditions, across cultures with no documented historical contact, describes a similar event: non-human beings arriving on Earth, sharing knowledge, and departing or diminishing. And every one of these traditions places that event in a specific time frame, around 10,000 years ago, around the end of the last ice age, around the same period when Göbekli Tepe was being built by a population whose technical capacity exceeded everything we knew about their era, and when something was entering the human genome that no known evolutionary pathway fully accounts for. Grok AI's synthesis of this evidence did not conclude that aliens had lived among humans for 10,000 years. It is important to be clear about that. The AI system that processes data without emotional investment in a particular conclusion that has no stake in confirming anyone's preferred narrative did not say the alien hypothesis is proven. What it said was more disturbing. It said the hypothesis cannot be ruled out by the available evidence, and it specified exactly which components of the available evidence create that condition. The anomalous cognitive and organizational capacity demonstrated by the builders of Göbekli Tepe 11,000 years ago, which predates any conventional explanation for how it was possible. The ghost population, DNA embedded in living human genomes, contributing functional biological adaptations from populations whose physical existence remains unconfirmed. The cross-cultural textual convergence on a narrative of non-human knowledge transmission at the precise historical moment when human civilization appears, already sophisticated, already astronomical, already organized in ways that the standard model cannot account for from first principles, and the deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe, an act that makes complete sense as message preservation by a people who understood their civilization, was ending and wanted what they knew to survive in the earth until someone someday had the tools to read it. The honest scientific position on whether aliens have lived among humans for 10,000 years is not yes, and it is not no. It is that the question, which sounds like a tabloid headline, turns out when examined seriously and with the full weight of the available evidence, to be one of the most legitimate unsolved questions in the entire history of human inquiry. The genome contains sequences from populations we cannot identify. The oldest monument on Earth was built by people whose technical capacity we cannot explain. The ancient texts of every major civilization describe the same event in the same time frame. And the AI that was asked to weigh all of it and return the most evidence-consistent answer declined to give the comfortable response because the evidence did not support the comfortable response. What the evidence supports is the admission that something happened 10,000 years ago that changed the human story in ways we can measure but cannot yet explain. Something that left its mark in the stone of southeastern Turkey and in the DNA of every living person on Earth. Something that the most powerful analytical tool humanity has ever built, when asked directly whether it could have been non-human, could not definitively say it was not. The answer shocked the world, not because it was dramatic. It shocked the world because it was honest. And honesty, when the question has been avoided for 10,000 years, is the most shocking thing of all. If this broke open a question inside you that you cannot close, hit like and subscribe right now. The next investigation on screen follows exactly where this one ends. Do not let the next discovery wait.